the metaphor that I always use, it's a bit like stand-up paddleboarding, right? So you're at the surf and you're actually standing on 2 feet on the surfboard, and you actually look like you're standing still. But the reality is that your feet are doing this constantly, and your whole body, every muscle in your body, is adapting and keep fine-tuning the balance. So you're never static. You're in constant movement. And I think that's a really good metaphor to start looking at this whole process. Because if you start getting anxious, you need to pull back and reassess. That's how I see it.
And I think it's inspiring to change. Oh, sorry.
No, go on, Ashley.
Go on, Ashley.
To say, with the inspired to change too, not only is it in our within ourselves and community, but this picture of where our world is right now, like everyone stopping, pressing pause. We've been forced into a pause, and it's causing inner reflection. And I think that that's what's super important. Is sure we may not be going out and making this huge change directly right in front of us in the world, but we can also be making that change inward and saying, okay, maybe I need to rethink some of my own methods and thoughts that I've grown up with. And
no, I like that. Yeah, it's really
good. Absolutely. I think one of the things that I've found helpful is to remind people that life is a journey. There is no end point. Kids, when they're growing up, they're sort of given this idea that there's some sort of end point when you're growing up. This is how you're going to be. And you talk to people and they think, well, this is how I am. I'm going to be like this forever. But no, life is this process by which you develop and change according to what happens to you and who you meet and what you do. That's how we grow as human beings, and it never stops until you're actually dead. So, change is something that is just normal for all of us to go through as we meet new circumstances and new people and new ideas. And it doesn't have to be massive. It can be just small. It could just be a small reflection on, how you want to, as Ashley said, how you want to be, in light of a new idea or a new perspective. It doesn't have to be massive, and it doesn't end. It's something that just keeps going. It's a journey. That's what I like here, a journey.
Well, we don't realize sometimes how much we really do inspire people every day with the things that we do or say, and how in groups of people, like one person says, okay, I'm moving, or they're doing something different, and it makes you reflect oh, they're moving. Where am I in my life? And where are they moving? And so it's and they're going off and pursuing their dreams. I can do that too, So it's we every day we do things that we don't realize other people, we influence people all the time.
That's right.
So just the little changes we do at being more mindful and learning.
5 minutes of breathing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the key is we're all connected, and just inspiring others, and that need to, no matter how you connect, whether it's a Zoom chat or whatnot. One person, I was trying to kind of wonder on some of these questions are they're not worded like your typical questions. I think it's just because it's such a conversational topic. But one of them, it was going back to the safe words, for example, strawberry cake. One of the listeners, I believe it is, I think it was that Alicia? I think that's who was asking. That looks like they're calling from what region? I think somewhere in the Midwest. Is their question was, in typical, when there is a question of when without a pandemic going on, there is a question of when let's say you have the safe word, just like what is brought out in the movie, that's a hint to get some help, and some people they're afraid to call the police, and in a pandemic, I think they're wondering or maybe want a little insight on how that, because usually when there's not a pandemic, and there's sometimes there's ways to sneak out, and then a friend will come and, maybe when the person's in another room, or they find a way to get them to a safe house or a community. But then some people were afraid to leave, and maybe maybe you guys can talk a little bit about, I don't know if you know anybody that went through an experience similar or what they could be doing, because the pandemic is still going on, maybe not locked down in all areas, especially in America, but in some places where it's still very much locked down, like in Australia, in the UK. They kind of want to know maybe some of those tips, like once you give that safe word like strawberry cake, how, what are some ways to get that person to safety? And that was one of the questions that maybe if you had some tips that you guys could each one of you on this panel could give some advice on.
Ashley?
Yeah, I mean, for my own experiences, that again, I speak very openly about, being there for others and also in my own, I think of establishing a friendship, and again, it may be hard in the circumstances right now, but if you can get a phone call, if you can get some type of interaction with another human that you do trust, outside of maybe when your spouse has, gone to the restroom or gone out of the house for groceries, or, your significant other, whatever the situation you're put in right now, right, is creating that 5 seconds. I was able to tell a very close friend of mine within 5 seconds, if I ever call you with this word, help me out. And I had called her with that word and she understood right away. And it was a similar situation to where with another friend or another person was knowing that whenever there's that little thing, you just always call authorities. Like there's no question. Send a police officer over. 100%. That is my first go-to, and I'll always say that, because if an officer is going to arrive at the home, that already has given myself or the person that is in danger a way out, because there is that extra body, there's that presence there.
Yeah, no, that's really, completely agree. Myrna, what are your thoughts?
I think it's important, if you're in that situation, to not isolate, and to also know that there is no shame, or it doesn't say anything about you that you are in that situation.
Yeah.
There is no shame, and if you need help, there are a lot of resources. There's the hotlines, but if you can establish, first of all, not to isolate, and to even get the courage to talk about it with a friend if you can. I mean, it's such a delicate situation. I'm afraid to say anything because it's, I don't know people's situations. Someone could be in where if they say anything and this friend says the partner, anything could happen. You know what I mean? The partner could get more upset and it could lead to something. But I do know that there are resources out there. And if you could just, not self-isolate and at least know for yourself that you don't have to be in this.
And one person just adding to that question, and I think one of our other listeners, she asked a question earlier about inspire change, and I thought I'd go back to her on that before we kind of talk more about that, is Ronia was asking, she's not real familiar with safe words, and I guess I'm trying to kind of make sure I understand exactly her question, and because I can't type into the text because then you start hearing typing over the air. And so one of my questions, I think her question was, are there I would think there isn't rules around what kind of, it's like a password, I guess they're asking. Like you said, you use the term, if I say strawberry cake, then that means I need help, just like what Ashley brought out earlier in like what the film brings out. They're asking if it needs to be more like 7 characters. I guess if you're on a Zoom call with somebody, or maybe you're in a chat because you're trying to be quiet and maybe you don't want to say too much, maybe if there's a shorter way to say. I'm hoping I'm answering her question. Ronia, if you want to ask it again in a different way, if I'm answering that correctly, before I'll have the panel go ahead and talk. But if there's something, if you want to know, like if you're in that situation and you want to know about typing, sometimes that's how people do it. They text somebody, especially because they might not be able to see it, or if they're on Facebook in a private chat and they say strawberry cake, or they don't even have time. Maybe they want to assemble. So I think maybe they only have 7 characters to say. So let's get some thoughts on that. And then we might have room for maybe 1 or 2 more questions before we wrap up.
I'm just going to say quickly, there was I apologize. I didn't.
No, go.
There was a video that actually Ashley had showed me about a woman that had, her boyfriend had a gun, and she talked him into going to the vet for their dog. And at the vet's office, she slipped a note to the counter people and said, "My boyfriend has a gun, please help." So there doesn't have to be a code word. It can be whatever it needs to be in your situation. Strawberry cake happened to be the post that Ashley put that touched us. But I've heard of situations where people in restaurants, and us noticing too, where the waitress noticed and asked, "Are you okay in the bathroom?" And she was like, "I'm not." And so she helped her out. So it's a matter, it can be a stranger,
Yeah, there was a
bathroom. Obviously being home is one situation, right? And you're figuring like the social media thing. There's ways to reach out in phone calls, social media. But when you are out in public, if you can get out into that situation, yes, find the stranger in the bathroom, write a note wherever you can get to, have a horrible stomach ache, go to urgent care, get to a place where there's other humans around. So that, if you don't have an established word, that you can still get the help that you need.
Okay, I hope that answered your question, Ernie. If it isn't, feel free to type something in there, and we'll try to answer it the best we can. Like I said, there's really no rules as long as you find a way intuitively to come up with something, like the trip to the vet or whatnot, or in a restaurant or whatnot. It broke my heart hearing this when you talked about a restaurant case. I saw a news clipping about it was actually a domestic violence situation towards a child, and you guys might have heard about that, where I think it was somewhere in Florida, where this kid looked like he had scars and he looked like he was unhealthy, and the waitress was very concerned, or the manager or somebody, and they were I think they slipped some kind of note or something so the kid would see it, because when they went to go order the food, they were like basically not ordering for the kid. He was like, he wasn't allowed to order. I'm like, that was horrible. And I think he was all through, and the first time the kid didn't want to do anything, I think he was scared. And it was the stepfather that was the abusive one, and the mom was letting it happen. And there was another child too that wasn't abused, but it turned out they both got arrested for it, because this person went back, talked to their manager, and they called the authorities, and they took care of it. And that probably saved that child from further abuse, just by finally she gave him a cue to be like, and then the kid was like, "Yes, I need help." And that's how they were able to help that. And so just little things. Like I said, there's really no rules. But, it's a good question, because, some people don't know. Some people, they don't have that. Or maybe, they might not have that option. Maybe they want to know, is there another way to get out of it? If you can't get them to take you to urgent care, you can't get them to take you to a vet, trying to find a friend. What if they take their phones and all the electronics away? I think that was another question somebody asked. Is there any way to sometimes get around with that if you can't? I mean, sometimes you just feel stuck, or you got to wait till they pass out, I'll let you guys talk a little bit on that. But that was another question that kind of came in. It was just, what happens when it's almost, you feel like there's nothing to do?
Right, and this inspire. I'm just thinking this full circle picture right now. This is what truly should inspire the change, even within ourselves. Is that we're being more aware of our surroundings. Like our Zoom call on Strawberry Cake. We could have just been having drinks, and we all had our own situations going on. A loss of a child, pregnancy. There's so many of these things that we're all so stuck in our own world. We've lost track of what's happening to our neighbor. What's happening to this person? And it's just this whole sense of community, and how we can be more observant too, that there might be going on right next to you you are completely unaware of, because you're in your phone, you're too so it's just becoming more aware. And it's not really just about ourselves. It's not about being selfish. It's about being more aware of humanity, humans, what's happening,
the neighbors and the people down the street. And yes, the fact that you haven't seen that person from that house for weeks.